because they got a $700 fuel surcharge thrown at them this month because of the cost of fuel. Sand Lake Township, like I mentioned, CFA is going on. Their county park hookup is ready for water, and they're waiting on water meters. It's awful to see the meeting coming up. And then Croswell last night, they're going to have a town hall meeting on the 25th. Final paving should be done there for Thursday. And they're looking for an ordinance officer. Haven't had any applicants for that. And the swinging bridge is probably going to be under repair structure. So if you go to the swinging bridge at all, watch for the boards that are kind of loose. That's all I have.
Good information. Thank you, Bill. Commissioner Heberling?
Yep, I attended all my township meetings, and one township in particular, Washington Township, they had a family there complaining, advising, I guess they're having problems with the drug house next door to them. The township was going to look into it, and also the highway drive-in theater was sold, and there was some discussion about some of the things that is going on there. They're for it. They just want to see what's going to happen down the road with some of the programs they have there. Also, I got a call from the Sandusky School early last week, and wondering what was going to be done with some property that need to be cleaned up on the way to the school. Mr. Faber had received a phone call or a text the other day that the cleanup that they were going to have funded is going to have to wait another year. So I called the city manager, Dave Faber, up, and him and Carl Asentas are going to see if there's something temporarily they can do with it on the surface, of maybe cleaning the cement off and getting rid of the brush and putting some dirt on top of it until that time comes. The good thing, it's in a pocket, nothing can drain away.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I myself spoke with Minden Township Supervisor Terry O'Connor the other day. He informed me that they are going to have a planning commission meeting this month on the 27th, and that DTE Energy will be there to discuss a utility scale solar facility. So if anybody has any questions or concerns related to large scale solar development in Minden Township, that'd be an important meeting to attend. That is all that I have.
Well, from memory, since I left my report home on my desk, last week I attended Marlette and Flint Township meetings. Really nothing out of the ordinary there. Last night I went to the City of Marlette meeting. Taco Bell has begun construction at the north end of Marlette. They have their pool building out for bids, so they're anxious to get those back in and hopefully get started.
Taco Bell has a pool building?
No, the City of Marlette does. Yeah, it's a new thing with Taco Bell.
You switched locations so quick.
Sorry.
I had my mind filled with Taco
Trying to
Bell.
move this meeting along, but you're not helping.
No, I'm not.
Tonight I have Buell Township, and we did have hire a manager for Evergreen Park. He will be starting on the 29th of July. And hopefully the gentleman that we had previously hired can get healthy again and eventually end up working at our parks. So things are going good with parks. That's it.
Thank you, Roger. Joel?
Well, Worth Township had a public hearing. The notification was done in a manner public hearings typically are, in the publication of record. And it did have a fair amount of attention with the amount of people that showed up there. So the public hearing was in regards to short-term rentals. And it is a topic that's not only across the nation, but specifically here along the shoreline in Michigan, both on the West Coast and East Coast. And so they were reviewing an ordinance change for short-term rentals. And most of the people that spoke up at the hearing, most of them had the perspective as short-term rental operators and wanting some provisions of restrictions, rules and things of that nature to make sure that they weren't a disturbance in the neighborhood. So that was really interesting to see. There are quite a few operators that buy up a bundle of houses, and it is just a business for them. So they still have that land use permitting to go through as well. But they had a lot of provisions involved, including to have a individual named by the rental operator as living within the community a short distance away that could be called in case there's a problem or something that person is supposed to come to the site and fix it like that. But that was a little bit of a lengthy meeting. It took a couple hours, about 3 hours for it to conclude. And I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. After that, we've got a board meeting tomorrow night and we'll be attending the final. That's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. At this time, Nathan, administrator's report.
Yeah, thank you. So I put papers in all your guys' boxes. We're gonna get the posting out. The recycling center's household hazardous waste event will be September 7th from 2 to 6 p.m. We're gonna get with the county news. We're gonna get that out in the paper as well. That'll be at the fairgrounds again in Sand Lake County. I met with Lisa Kenny. She's working on the Sand Lake County Master Plan. Gary connected us. We had a really good meeting, kind of talked about I guess her efforts in building the master plan, some of her background and knowledge, I guess, of the county is.
Exceptionally great.
Yeah, she's got a lot of knowledge about the county, and I'm kind of excited to jump on this committee moving forward. So I think it'll be really good to see what we can do for the county. Spent some time working with the judges, Todd Hillman, our security group, looking at some of the security practices that we have, what we can do to maybe make the process a little smoother. There's been some hiccups with some things down with the security entrance. It's left some people a little disgruntled, so we're trying to smooth some of those things out to keep the building safe, everybody safe who comes in here, while also making sure that things are not maybe unnecessarily done. So the Dte Windmills, as you mentioned, solar is kind of moving in to Minden now, ironically on the heels of settling the windmill disputes in Minden Township. So I think that was a little bit of push, maybe they had settled those disputes. Now they can look at some of the solar they have or they want in those areas. So it'll be interesting to see what Minden chooses to do in regards to that after this lengthy litigation that took place with the windmills. But we do have some numbers from them. The treasurer's office is looking at what needs to be built back. So to the people, they're sending those numbers in. Region 10, PIHP, the prepaid inpatient health plan. Jim Johnson reached out to me from Region 10, and he said they're interested in seeking a member from Sand Lake County to their substance abuse advisory board. They meet once a month. They're going to move to allow for even some virtual participation if they can. They're actively seeking somebody from Sand Lake County that's been absent from that group for quite some time. It doesn't need to be a board, not one of you guys, but if you guys are aware of somebody who may have interest, I would like to talk to you about that. I had a couple ideas of people, but I wanted to pass this along to you guys in case you can identify anybody. They look actually for somebody who's gone through and is actively in recovery, because they said sometimes they bring the most to the table through their experiences. So, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Are there any questions for our administrator? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comments pertaining to today's agenda. Are there any public comments pertaining to an agenda item? Hearing none, we will dive into our presentation of our 2021 audit. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you for having me here this afternoon. I'm going to go over the PowerPoint presentation, so you all should have a copy. It looks like this. This is really a high-level overview of the audit. We'll talk about some of the numbers on there, and you're focusing on your general fund, some of the governmental, the overall funds of the county. We had a single audit this year, so I'll kind of go through that process and point out some areas of recommendations as well. So my name is Jamie Rivette. I believe I've met all of you, and I spoke with John this year too. So I'm the audit partner on the audit. So my team was out here back in January doing most of the field work. We have some reports that come in, actuary reports that come in a little bit later. So it takes some time to put it all together and get it finalized. So if you look on page 2, really what you're looking for from your independent auditor is the audit opinion. And when you do get the financial statements, which are in the box here, we have copies for everybody. You'll notice the opinion changed this year. So the standards changed and we had to show the opinion in a little bit of a different order. So now you actually see the opinion is the first paragraph on there. It used to be you had to flip through a few pages to find it. So the county was issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance offered. It's a clean opinion. There are no additional material modifications or entries that need to be made. It also points out in there really that management's responsibility, and that is for the preparation and fair presentation of those financial statements in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. And then as your auditors, what happens is my team and I come in and audit that information, and then we issue you an opinion on that. So if you turn to page 3, here we have bar charts, and we went back and grabbed, so we have 5 years of information included on here. And we just want to kind of point out, really focusing on the change from 2020 to 2021. So if we're looking at the blue bar there, that's your total revenue for your general fund. This does exclude any other financing sources and uses, so that it would be transfers in and out. So transfers in the general fund or out of the general fund. I didn't put it in here. This is more showing the operations on what we have. So we did see an increase. You can see from 2020 to 2021 of the blue bar there for your revenue. It did go up about 853,000 over last year. A couple of things that made that up really were your state grants. So we did see an increase this year in state share revenue that you got, which was common across the state of Michigan. There were more funds that the state had that they were able to allocate to the various municipalities within the state. So that was a very common increase, and yours did go up about 270,000 over last year's. We also saw an increase in charges for services over last year. A lot of that was related to the inmate bed rental being active then for the 2021 versus 2020, having COVID and the pandemic, which was reducing those charges for services. Permit fees were up this year with some of the worth projects that were going on, as well as an increase in some of the housing sales. So we saw an increase in some of those state taxes that we were able to see from that. If you're looking at the orange bar, then your expenditures for general fund, those were pretty flat compared to last year. So there was a slight decrease there. And really there was less drain work assessments that would need to be done. So the salaries for those was a decrease this year. And then the purple line that we kind of have floating along the bottom there, you can see is your total fund balance. So the fund balance for 2021 for general fund was a little over 2.1 million, and it was almost flat compared to last year. So the decrease from 2020 to 2021 in fund balance was about $4,000. So almost a break-even point for you for your general fund. The next page is now your governmental revenue, expenditures, and fund balance. So I just want to point out that is all of the funds then for the county. So that includes your general fund, road millage, your health department. We have the new ARPA fund that has about $4 million for ARPA money in there, and then all of the non-major funds too. So you got to think of this as a whole for your governmental. So you can see these dollar amounts are significantly larger, and we did see a slight increase there in the revenue from about 29 million up to about 30.7 million to 2021. A lot of it was what we just talked about, those increases in your general fund, because that's included in here. Also, the road millage saw an increase in their revenue. Last year was a timing difference. So the rules say if you don't receive your revenue within 60 days after year end, you cannot count that in your revenue. So there was the local community stabilization grant that last year we didn't have within 60 days, so we couldn't show it in revenue. But in 2021, we did have it. So we did see an increase then in our revenue. So it really was just the timing difference for that. There was also a significant increase in the health department revenue to about $1.2 million as our operations really reverted back to where it was prior to the COVID pandemic. And then the expenditures, again, the orange bar there, pretty consistent to where you were last year too. So nothing really to point out there. And our fund balance grew this year with the significant revenue increases. leaving the expenditures flat caused us to have an increase in our fund balance this year of a little over $2 million. So the total fund balance for all of your governmental funds was $12.5 million. Now we break those down even further on page 5 of your revenue into what I call the various categories of where your revenue is coming from for your governmental revenues. So we have those broken down to taxes, which is about 14 million, intergovernmental, about $4.5 million in revenue. And then charges for services, you can see we had a significant increase, which we kind of talked about those with the health department. And then the 550,000 for general fund as well. And licenses and fees, you know, is pretty flat there, about 162,000. That's been pretty flat for the past 4 years. Reimbursements and others, about 1.6 million, and then interest and rents, a little over 300,000. On page 6, we have the pie chart here now showing where the expenditures are for your governmental expenditures. And this does exclude the transfers out, which equates to about $5.1 million. But kind of 3 areas that I'll point out along the bottom there is, you know, the biggest one being your public safety, which is a little over 7.7 million or 30% of the total governmental expenditures. And that was right in line with last year. I pulled last year's to see, and it was the exact same percent. So 30% of the expenditures for governmental funds were going to public safety. And the sheriff's department does make up about 4.9 million of that. And then we have health and welfare. The blue section there is about 20% of your total. And that was about 5.2 million. And the health department expenditures make up the majority of that, of about $3 million. And then we have public works here, the purple section towards the bottom. That's 16% of the total. And that's mainly related to your road millage. That's about 3.3 million make up the expenditures for public works for your road millage fund. And again, that percentage was 16% last year too. So pretty consistent with the disbursements of the county as to where they were going and what functions they're supporting. Public safety, public works, and health and welfare were the 3 largest last year as well. On page 7 is your general fund, and this is just looking at your fund balance. So a few years ago, the GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, put out a rule, it was GASB, I think 54, that basically told us we needed to have various buckets for our fund balance. It's not just all fund balance that can be used for whatever purposes that were needed. Some of them are going to be assigned, committed, restricted. So we have these different rules as to where they go. So I just thought it was important to kind of show that here for your general fund, where you do have out of the 2.2 million in your general fund balance, 1.9 is unassigned. We have some in prepaid. So basically the county's already paid for that. So we already have expenditures related to that. About 274,000, and then just a small amount is assigned, about 13,000. And I did the similar slide then for your governmental funds. And you can see it kind of shifted here because a lot of our governmental funds are based on grants that we get. So you can see here the largest portion is restricted. It's about 9.6 million. So we have the majority of your governmental funds are restricted for a specific purpose. So you get a grant, it needs to be spent on that specific purpose. And then we have a little bit in unassigned, about 1.7 million there, with the remainder being in the committed and assigned sections. And then my last couple of slides I have are just some overall comments for the county that we're required to share. We did adopt 2 new GASBs this year that were required. GASB 89, which is accounting for interest before the construction period. We were already recording those as such, so there was really no change to the county. And then there was some change to the component unit classification too. So I listed those in there, and again, it's no change to you. It's just a new rule that came out. One that's upcoming is going to affect you is going to be GASB 87. That is the lease standard. So we have a template that we will be working with our clients on to help make sure we get that implemented correctly too. So instead of us having operating leases and capital leases, operating leases go away. We have to record them now as capital leases. So that's a change that'll be for your next fiscal year audit. We had some significant estimates in the financial statement. So I know last year we talked about the same estimates that we had to. That's the estimate of your net pension liability, and then also the other post-employment benefits, the liability and the assets there. As there are significant assumptions that are going into those calculations done by actuary. So they have, life expectancy, how long you're going to work, here before you retire, the investment rate or returns. Those are a lot of estimates and guesses that are going into that. So we're just required to, share with you that there are estimates in those financial statements. We had an estimate also for the useful lives of capital assets. So when you purchase a capital asset, we're guessing how long it's going to last. We work with management and then depreciate it over the useful lives. Also, we have an estimate on some litigation claims too. And just making sure the historical claims and the probability of loss, if we have those to be reported. We had one past adjustment, so that was an adjustment that was not material, and we decided not to post it based on some alternative investments. So it's really just the timing. There's a little bit of a lag on those alternative investments because they're not actively traded as to the valuation of those at December 31st. So yours had like a 3-month lag time. So we just do a comparison, and it's not worth it to post the entry to reverse it next year to post it again. So we just pass on that adjustment and evaluate that each year to make sure it's not a material item. We had one item that we considered a management recommendation or comment, and that is with the budget and how that's adopted on the line item budget. That's typically not a common way to have the budget adopted. I know we talked about that last year too, and I think it was already too late in the process because your next fiscal year had been adopted, but it's not really efficient for budget compliance to do that, and that's not a requirement to have the line item done. So we did just recommend that, you evaluate that and what works best for.
I gotta say, having been involved at that point where we had that enacted, 3 years ago?
This is your
A
second.
former county commissioner currently running for state rep advocated hard for that. Had me convinced it was the right thing to do because after all, his background is accounting for big corporations across the world. And it seemed quite reasonable. Why is that not a standard in this practice?
Because every time you want to move anything on that, so instead of adopting it by like a department level, anytime something wants to be moved, you have to go and do a budget amendment by that line to make sure there was enough money in there, and where you're taking it from it's not efficient. It's a lot of time administratively that has to be done. And I audit a lot of municipalities, and not one of them have a line. They may do a line item budget for internally. That's what you guys want to look at. But when it comes to adopting it and what gets put, on the website and what is in the resolution is not by line item.
So you can have oversight of a type that is done relatively informally, if what I'm hearing you correctly.
So if you want to move from like supplies to, what's another line item one that, yeah, like it is just administratively difficult to have to print that out and make sure that every line item is within budget. And when one is over, then you have to go and move it, or you have to get approval, right? If we have to increase the budget, if you can't take it from somewhere else. Whereas if it's all in one, you get a lot more leeway of moving little items like that. They're immaterial. I'm not saying it would be, oversight on something being paid above and beyond the budget. It's just, you don't have to then legally, because the way you adopted it, everything needs to be within budget. So as soon as you have one over, then when I do the auditing procedures report to the state, I have to then check a box that you were not within budget.
It makes sense because your budget is your budget in that little box for that department. There's no sense having 150 line items when it's still all the same at the end, right?
Right. The total is not going to change.
Was previously the way it was done, while it wasn't on a line item, the way you're describing, pencil category and, copier paper category, was it more broad at one,
Department level.
the department level?
Mhm.
And so what was changed was to like specific quantities of whatever, that was
So
unwieldy.
each department will have salaries, benefit, telephone, like every single little, deep down as you go, when you're classifying things and charging them to an account.
When would a line item be appropriate? What type of organizations do things like that? Why did that become a thing? Why was that such a point that seemed reasonable? No,
I don't know.
no,
I don't have
it's just not generally done.
It is not.
Do big multinational corporations do that? Gary, you were here with me when you
I remember
remember what
well.
was said, and it seemed reasonable because we all voted for it. We all said, yeah, that seems reasonable. I mean, he sat right here and told us that.
I would say the source was leaning towards the private sector.
Yeah.
So then if you consider a CPA recommending that,
Yeah.
and I would consider that to be job security because now they have more work to do.
Does that sound?
Well, the other thing, you got to remember, he was a forensic CPA,
Yeah.
right? So he had dealt with that and
Okay.
worldwide, not.
Yeah, we audited a bunch of municipalities, and that's my specialty, governments and schools, and I have a handful of nonprofits, so it's usually not done by a line item.
Right.
Maybe a small nonprofit, a smaller entity, but I mean, there are hundreds of, probably
With- yeah.
thousands of pages.
With a little budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Okay.
going through.
We've been told now, since we adopted that, 3-4 years ago, we've been told for 4 years in a row. That's crazy. So we get it. Yeah.
Well, it seemed reasonable from the oversight, saying that it should be looked at in that way.
Did you spend time going through that line item by
Well,
line item?
Clearly, none of us had to spend time going through that, right? So we didn't realize the quantity of work, but it seemed like it focused attention on developing the budget and staying within the budget, even within those line items.
Yeah, so internally, I think
Yeah.
it's a great tool,
Yeah.
right? Internally, I think it's great if gas prices went up, so you need to jack that budget
Yeah.
line up, and you can see that. But when it comes to what your level of responsibility is and what you're here to do, does not need to be at that.
So it's being done, but just not at the level for our introspection. Got it.
Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
Mhm.
We were
No
taking
problem.
oversight to the extreme.
Yeah, it's okay. I'd rather be that way.
Department level for 2022.
Okay. Your report will be probably, a lot less thick because we have to report that the same way too, so.
Tell me there was a benefit though, finance director, to doing that. There must have been some small benefit. No, you can't think of one? I feel like it probably had people looking at their budget more stringently to have a appropriate view of what they need to be up to.
I think they're already doing that. To get to that department level one, you would have to see what makes up my department total. But to watch it, and if you had something that went over, to then have to do a budget amendment to, following through is administratively.
So if we take them line items out, then next year, your cost will be less because you won't have to. Nice try, right?
Good try, good try.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was our one comment and recommendation. And then if you look on page 11, so we did have two findings. One was the material weakness under the government auditing standards. We posted material journal entries, which we had that last year as well. So I think there were about 14 adjusting journal entries that we posted, and some of them were significant. So just wanted to point that out. We needed to post those to make sure everything was materially stated in the financial statements. And then the second item is the federal award. We had a significant deficiency / non-compliance finding. And because the county does receive and spend more than $750,000 in federal grants, you're required to have a single audit done, and that is a program audit. So we did audit 3 major programs for you this year because we have to follow the rules and make sure we have proper coverage. So we audited the water and waste disposal systems for rural communities program, the CRF, the coronavirus relief funds, as also the COVID-19 provider relief funds too. So we had to audit 3 major programs. Those are all federal compliance supplement driven, and it's yes or no questions. And each program has a different set of rules and requirements on what you're looking for in testing them. So you did have total expenditures about 2.5 million. And we did audit those 3. And our comment was related to the uniform guidance or our specific policies and procedures that need to be recorded and kept in the health department, was lacking some of those related to their federal policies. And then my last slide that I have are just some future challenges. One of them is the economic outlook. I mean, we saw a nice increase in those grants with the ARPA funds. You have about, like I said, $4 million sitting out there, but just making sure we're staying on top of those requirements, the reporting requirements, the filing deadlines for those too, and that we're in compliance with the grants and the spending rules. Future capital needs, this is very common amongst a lot of my municipalities with some of the aging infrastructure that we have on the buildings too, on just making sure, that there's no specific revenue stream coming in to help take care of those, that we're planning ahead and making sure some of those funds are set aside to care for those capital needs. And then the last item I have on here is the other post-employment benefits funding with a net OPEB liability of about 3.3 million, which was similar to the amount that was recorded last year too for your net amount. Are there any questions that I could answer for you?
There was a drastic difference in one of these charts that just caught my eye, and it was assigned. I am on page 7, assigned fund balances between 2020 and 2021. There's a stark difference there. Just dive into that just a little bit.
I don't know what last year's number was off the top of my head because I only have the current year assigned. But I know this year's assigned was 13,000. Let me see, I have a footnote on that too. And I can get that for you. So we have about 13,492 in the current year is assigned for payroll. So that's a separate code on the fund balance. Could that be the current compensated absences amount? 13,492. No, I'll have to go and look that up, and I can tell you what it was for 2020 and then what 2021.
Okay, at your convenience. You could follow.
Yeah, no problem. I'll email it to Christy.
Thank you. You said you do a lot out of municipalities.
Yes.
In reviewing our charges for services, what are we in the average?
For
Whatever, I see page 5, charges for services. This year was just over 10 million.
Well, it's hard to do a comparison for a county to a county because they won't all have the same, not all of them have a health department, not all of them have a medical care facility. So it's hard to say if you are charging a correct amount. One quick calculation I did, and this was more related to your general fund, was to look at what your fund balance was compared to total expenditures to see if you had a healthy fund balance. But if you wanted to look at fund by fund to see if you're breaking even, if you're dipping into fund balance, that's usually where you can see, okay, are we charging enough for the services that are being charged to that fund? I can point you in here and we can look at a specific fund if you want to. It's like health department, a medical care facility, if you want to look at that. But overall, I can't really say if this isn't a good slide to say.
Well, it's considerably more at, just over 10 million than it was in 2017 at, 5.5 million or so.
Yeah, so did you always have health department and medical care facility? Those were the two bigger ones that I saw a significant increase in the health department, about 1.2 million this year. But that makes sense coming from 2020 with the pandemic on some
Yeah,
of
and
those
you see that
charges.
spike from,
Mhm.
from 20.
Yeah, well, I wasn't here in 2017 or 18. to know that, but I could go on the state's website and pull up audit report. We could look by fund just to see.
I'll direct my questions to the finance director.
Okay. Right. And I should probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll just have to go and look to
Thanks.
see, but
Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Jamie? Hearing none, Jamie, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. This time, we'll move on to appointments to standing committees. There are none. Chair appointments, there are none. No general resolutions. So we'll move directly into committee reports, and we will start with Commissioner Wyatt.
Personnel met with Gary and myself today regarding parks for a maintenance supervisor position. We had a good conversation with the representative from Parks. In regards to that, we recommend that that position be filled. They'll be doing some work on the job description as they move forward. That's about it, right?
Thank you, Commissioner Wyatt. Roger?
I have nothing. Nothing.
Okay. Health Department meeting this morning. Normal health department stuff. We've been working on trying to create an evaluation for the medical director position. I feel that we got that finished up today, which is something that we've been working on for a while. Other than that, not much there. The ARPA committee did meet earlier today. Two things of note. There was a request for premium pay that was removed from the list today. So that is no longer in contention on the list of things for uses of ARPA money. There was one other item approved, and that was the parks request for municipal water hookup at Lexington Park. And that did include match funds. So that will be moved on to finance and administration. We'll see that in 2 weeks on that agenda. That is all I have for committee reports. Commissioner Egan.
Commissioner Wyatt and Commissioner Black, you took care of my answers. So,
Sorry about that.
no, that's good.
Okay.
Council on Aging approved their HDC payment, Mackenzie's paramedic program, and also the geriatric program. So they upped their budget and they're going to be supporting those programs again moving forward this year. And Child Abuse Prevention Council finally hired a new victim advocate. Like everybody else, been having a hard time finding employees, so they're grateful to have that position filled. They got some grant money coming, so they're waiting on vehicles. They have grant money to purchase some vehicles for themselves, but they're told that they might not be able to get those vehicles until sometime in the fall, later in the fall. They approved their VOCA grant, $237,000 is what they got for that. They had over 34 moms and about 50 adults attended their baby shower. They had 110 youth for their free movie, and they're doing free bowling, I think, in a couple of weeks. And then at the middle of August, they're going to be doing their kids camp as well. So they've got a lot of things on their plate right now. So really good stuff for our county.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Sarkella. Okay, at this time, we'll move on to unfinished business. There is none, so that will take us into new business. And we will start with FA 106-22.
Stanley County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payments of current claims for 2022 identified on the accounts payable report dated July 12th, 2022 for the general bank account in the amount of $113,003.53.
We have a motion from Finance Chairman Sarkella, support from Commissioner Heberlein. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 107-22, a budget, adoptions, amendments, appropriations, and transfers.
Stanley County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following amendments, transfers, and establishes the following accounts as listed.
We have a motion support from Commissioner Sarkella, support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 108-22, approval of additional general fund bank account checks charged to June 2022.
Stanley County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of additional general fund bank account checks charged June 2022 as follows: $334,957.58 to ACH payments, $1,505,793.72 in checks for a total of $1,840,751.30.
Support. We have a motion from Commissioner Sarkella, support from Commissioner Heberlein. Is there any discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 109-22, authorization to purchase equipment, Sheriff's Department.
Santa Clara County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the sheriff's office purchase body cameras, tasers, video recording solution and licenses, software, and training from Axon Enterprises Incorporated, a cost not to exceed $344,891.99 for immediate approval, with funding from ARPA funds, along with the potential of approximately $58,000 reimbursed from Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority MMRMA grant.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella, support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there any discussion on the topic?
We heard anything about this potential reimbursement the last 2 weeks? Ryan, do you know?
I don't know offhand. Lieutenant Smith was taking care of that. He had to go out to an accident scene, but from what I do understand, that's a reimbursement grant. So once we go through the process, then we submit and then they'll give us their chunk back.
Okay,
I don't think there's any issues as far as getting that money. I sit on that council and I know there's money there that they're looking to give out. So I don't see an issue getting it reimbursed.
thank you.
Any further discussion on FA 109-22? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 110-22, authorization to fund de-escalation training, Sheriff's Office.
Santa Clara County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the Sheriff's Office and Drug Task Force to provide funding to host a de-escalation training from Calibre Press for 66 attendees at a cost not to exceed $2,310, with funding from the Drug Task Force, and to further seek reimbursement from Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella, support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there any discussion on the topic?
Yeah. Lieutenant, what's 66 attendees? Is that all gonna be sheriff's office from San Juan County or?
This is something that is heading up. So I believe it's gonna be on the inside along with the municipalities that work in our area. I don't think the jail is included in that, that I'm aware of. So
So this is more for being on the street than being inside them, because I know they've probably got,
yeah,
Programs
we do
specifically for that.
de-escalation training and different stuff.
so we are including
This
local,
is more law enforcement oriented rather than correction.
so like Lexington, Croswell, Brown City,
I
they can all
believe so. I'm
participate.
not 100%.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Any further comments?
I think Director Johnson said, yeah, that's what it's for.
He gave you a good nod from the hallway.
Perfect.
Yeah, you want-
Okay, all in favor of FA 110-22, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 111-22, authorization for wage increase for U.S. Marshal transports.
Santa Clara County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the Sheriff's Office increase U.S. Marshal Transport Agreement to reflect an increase from $25 to $28 per hour effective August 1st, 2022, with funding from the Federal Transportation Reimbursement.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella, support from Commissioner Heberlin. Is there discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to FA 112-22, authorization to purchase additional cameras in VMS switch, Sheriff's Office.
Santa Clara County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the Sheriff's Office purchase 8 additional cameras and upgrade to a 48-port VMS switch from Accurate Controls Incorporated at a cost not to exceed $24,403.85, with funding from the inmate commissary funds.
Support. We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella, support from Commissioner Wyatt. Is there discussion on the topic? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to NFA 037-22, acceptance of the 2021 audit.
Santa Clara County Board of Commissioners hereby accepts the 2021 audit as presented from Yo and Yo.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella, support from Commissioner Heberlin. Is there any discussion on the topic?
Change the picture on your report. They need to change that picture on the front. They got the courthouse, and they got Chester's Marina.
I like that Marino.
Yeah, well, you need to go to the public one.
Sorry.
That's all.
Or a park.
Hey, if the picture on the front cover is the biggest thing, that we're worried about with the
Exactly.
audit, we're doing good.
I'd
So
rather see a park on there myself.
Okay, there you go.
now you opened a can of worms.
Yeah, that's a good can of worms.
Okay, any further discussion related to NFA 037-22? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Jamie, thank you again for being here today. This takes us on to our salmon colored piece of paper, which is NFA 025-22, authorization of emergency purchase.
Santa Clara County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the emergency purchase for the rental of a generator system for the Emergency Operations and Training Center from Wolverine Power Systems in Zeeland, Michigan at a cost not to exceed $5,444.90 with funding from the 9/11 millage.
We have a motion from Commissioner Sarcella. Is there support?
Support.
We have support from Commissioner Ballard. Is there discussion? Because everyone was aware this was the generator to keep things up. And thankfully, Nick was, able to stay in town in case something happened. But I think as of now, it's repaired and we're back to status quo. All those in favor of NFA 025-22 signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. That takes us into general public comments. Are there any general public comments today?
I just wanted to thank Santa Clara County and Sheriff Rich for being involved with the GHOST program and for making this effort to stop human trafficking in Huron County, because I've been through it first. I'm just so thankful. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for the positive comment. And I'm sure everyone here is aware of what happened. It's nice to see collaboration amongst counties to make good things happen. Are there any further public comments? Hearing none, we're going to move on. At this time, the Board of Commissioners will be going into closed session to review attorney-client communication. When we come out of closed session, we will only be approving closed session minutes and adjourning the meeting. If anybody wants to wait in the hallway, you're welcome to come back, but that's what will be left on the agenda after we come out of close. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of attorney-client
I'll
communication.
make that motion in the closed session.
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Heberlin. We have support from Commissioner Ballard. I need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Sarcella,
Yes.
Commissioner Wyatt,
Yes.
Commissioner Ballard,
Yes.
Chairman Block,
Yes.
and Commissioner Heberlin.
Yes, sorry.
We are now in closed session
I
now.
was waiting to talk to Jamie. The first time I ever seen you come in here. You remind me of my grandma. And she's going to South Carolina this fall.
Oh, is she?
She's gonna be. Doctor.
Oh,
But
cool.
you guys, you smile, you're like.
I'll take it as a
So
compliment.
there's another one just like you somewhere.
Thank you for being here today, Jamie.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Good to see you all again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yep.
Nathan, why don't you go ahead and kind of get us started here?
Okay. So
Maybe I should give some context first.
that's entirely fine.
So we've been in closed session related to our medical care facilities.